Sorry about that. My periscope crashed on me, so I had to restart. So hi ladies, I'm gonna be doing laundry while I talk to you guys because my kids are out of town for a week, so I'm trying to get caught up on everything. So, my follow-up on my 16-mile hike. Now, with my hike, as you girls know, I am training for a hike up at the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I recently on Saturday did a hike at a state park that was supposed to be 16 miles, wound up being more like 22 miles in the end. It was rather interesting. But I noticed that today, I was really sore after 16-mile hikes, or after 22 miles by the end. Basically, at the state park we went to, what was the 16-mile trail, the first 3 to 5 miles of it were pretty beaten down, worn down path, which was awesome. I thought, you know, okay, well, most of the trail is going to be that way. Wrong. Apparently not too many people are crazy enough to pick the 16-mile loop, which is the hardest trail there, for a hike like that. So after about 3 to 5 miles, we wound up running into some interesting issues, but it was good that we ran into those issues on the trail. Me and my friend, I took a guy friend with me, because my husband could not hang in on the trails with me. His knees just won't take it. He used to do football and wrestling, so a lot of the stuff I do on hiking, like he can make a certain amount of miles and all, but a lot of the climbing and things like that I do on hiking, he can't keep up with that, and he's definitely afraid of heights. I mean, I'm afraid of heights too, but I'm still the crazy nutcase who will actually climb a side of a waterfall barefoot, just so I can get a picture, because I've been working on a photography thing for quite some time. It's a project I started when I was 20 for waterfalls. I have an obsession with waterfalls, so I will actually climb pretty far to get to a waterfall. One time at a state park I went to, I actually climbed in behind a waterfall. I saw an opening in an area where I could sit and take pictures from behind a waterfall and seeing the water just rush over and everything, and it was really, really cool experience. If you ever get a chance to do it, do it. But that's besides the point. So on the 16-mile hike, we get the first 3 to 5 miles in, and the maps at this state park suck. They're in the process of redoing the hand maps that they give out to people and redoing the maps at the different checkpoints throughout the trail where you could rest. Because they don't have miles included on it. On the ones that do have miles included on it, the miles are actually wrong. So when we're sitting here thinking, oh, like we've made it this far, it was actually double that. But we get in like the first, I think it was about 3 or 5 miles, everything was good and beaten down and worn in. First problem we ran into, a bridge was out. And I'm like, really? A bridge? A bridge? Why did it have to be a bridge? So we're sitting there looking, and oh, you see my cat's tail walking by. Hi, Sylvie. You see, I see this bridge over this little river, and we looked down, which was a pretty decent way down, and we're like, well, crap. It's nothing but rock bed below us with like this much water in this river-ish bed. And I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. If we fall, we're gonna like break our ankle, break an arm. What are we gonna do? Well, there was a log that had fallen over. And of course, when you're on a trail like that, unless you're gonna turn around and walk your butt all the way back, which is just giving up, and I refuse to be defeated when it comes to something like that, I decided instead, we're gonna go over the log. So I tested it with my weight. It was good. And for those of you who are just joining, I'm actually doing laundry while I'm talking. I tested my weights with the log, and it could hold, so I threw my pack over to the other side because trying to balance with all that stuff on, not a good idea. And I hopped up on the log and was able to get it across, so was my friend. We keep hiking through, and all of a sudden, it's like they've never maintained the 16-mile trail. They never maintained it at all. So we have trees that are down and in the way, and I'm not talking like, oh, this little tiny tree about this big around. No, I'm talking like a tree, like a huge oak tree falling down in the path, but not just one, but like 5 oak trees falling down in the paths in our way and stuff. So we're having to climb up over fallen trees, crawling under fallen trees, trying to go around if there's enough room to go around and everything else. And one thing we noticed was there was a lot of wild grapes on the trail. So one of the things the reason why I took my neighbor with me was he's really good at identifying plants and telling me, like, this plant's for this plant's for that, don't eat this, don't eat that, it's okay to eat this. And we saw musket grapes out there. They weren't in bloom yet. Well, if they were, the deer ate them all, because we also saw about 5 bucks and 6 different does and a whole bunch of fawns out there. It was quite amazing. I absolutely fell in love with those deer. But they like to eat musket grapes, but it's also okay to eat musket grapes. So I got to learn a little bit about that. And then we get further in, and all of a sudden it's like, I'm 5'7". My friend is about 5'6", and the grass is as tall as him. There were certain areas where we completely lost the path at all, and the only way to get through it was to just take a stick, start whacking away at the grass as you're walking so you don't step on a snake, in order to get to the other side to find the next marker on the tree that, hey, we're on the right path. Because I didn't want to veer off the path, because this was our first time at this state park. So it was pretty scary at times. And then, we finally get to different mile markers and everything, and we're like, oh yes, we've made it this far, and we find a place for lunch, and it was like this little valley where power lines were running through the state park, so it was a nice good clearing under some power lines. So we ate there. Of course, we should have held out, because a mile later we found an awesome place that would have been great to have lunch. It was a riverbed, and there was like this little mini waterfall and stuff like that. So instead we took our shoes off, sat on the waterfall, stuck our feet in the water, and chilled for a few minutes to cool off. The more we got in, the further we got in, the more problems we ran into. One bridge, as we were going across it, I was the last person to cross it, he was the first person to cross it. The moment I took my foot off it, the bridge collapsed up underneath me. I was just like, oh my god, thank god I was not on that bridge when it went down, because that was like a good 6-foot drop. That would have sucked. And of course, I've got a gallon of water on me in my Camelback, plus it holds 2 liters, so I had 6 bottles of water in it extra. And then my friend also had about 6 to 8 bottles in his pack, on top of all the food and stuff we were carrying. So it was getting pretty tiring. But the cool thing was, this was the longest hike that I've ever done. And the longest hike to date before that was 12-mile hike up in Asheville, and up at the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I actually went to a park that had, I think it was 7 or 8 different waterfalls, and part of the Hunger Games, the original Hunger Games, the very first one, was filmed there on one of my trips up there. I got to stand over one of the bridges and look down at them filming PETA and everything else, hiding himself in the mud on a riverbank. So that was actually kind of cool. But on that particular hike, I was there for waterfalls, and I used to use these things called barefoot gloves, but I cannot find them anywhere anymore. I know that there was a big, I think it was like a lawsuit or something like that against the barefoot gloves. If you've never seen them, they look like gloves, kind of like toe socks for your feet, except there's no sole to the shoe, but it's like rubber grippies on the bottom of them. And they're not good for walking and hiking like people were trying to use them for, but they are awesome for climbing a waterfall. So I had those, and I wound up climbing 6 different waterfalls, and the rock that they were rushing, that the water was rushing over, was actually wet granite. So, I'm a little bit of a risk taker. I don't use ropes when I climb either. I just find that crap gets in the way. But on this particular hike, on this weekend, we finally get to what we think is mile marker 9. It was actually mile marker 12. So that one update where I'm sitting there and I'm eating a sandwich and I'm talking about we're at mile marker 9, it's like really hot out here. No, we were actually at mile marker 12 at that point. And we're sitting there looking at time and we're like, man, no way we're going to make the rest of that 16-mile trek, because the rest of that trail is super long and this trail is already getting to the point where it's so overgrown that I did not want to be on that trail anymore. So we took an equestrian trail back where they ride horses on, and still wound up being just as long as if we would have stayed on the blue trail. So there's that. But by that point, we were kind of grateful that it was getting flat land, because let me tell you, I have a fear of spiders. I do not like spiders. I hate spiders. Hate spiders. So, with the spiders, when everything was so overgrown, well, let's just say I learned a lot about different types of spiders that day, because every 5 seconds, even though we had a stick and we're like waving it around in front of us trying to get down spider webs and things like that, so we're not walking into it, because there's a lot of poisonous spiders out in the mountains around here. There's brown widows. I don't know if you guys know about those, but there's not just a black widow to worry about, there's also brown widows, and they are more aggressive than a black widow is, and they can kill a whole lot quicker too. We almost walked right smack into one of those that was eating something on the web. Ugh, gives me the creeps. We walked into so many different spider webs, and today I got in the shower and I was sitting there looking, and I was like, I have all these bug bites all over me, and I got to looking because they don't itch, they hurt. And I started looking at them and I realized they're not bug bites. I looked very closely at them. I've got them all over my body. I've got like 3 on one rib, 2 on the other, several on my hips, several on my thighs, because I was the crazy lady who decided to wear shorts. I didn't realize the trail was going to be that grown over. So I've got several on my thighs, a few on my calves, and they itch like slightly, but for the most part, they hurt. And once I started looking at it, I realized when they had this yellow-ish center to it, they aren't bug bites, they're spider bites. So I've actually got bit by probably multiple different types of spiders while I was on this trail this weekend. Luckily, I did not have a reaction, so that's good. And when I did get home, I did take a butt ton of Benadryl because my sinuses were acting all crazy, so I think that had a lot to do with why I didn't have such a strong reaction to all the spider bites, because usually I get bit by a spider and it flares up like really, really bad. So, I've discovered that I really hate spiders, and I probably won't do that particular trail again, just because unless I take like a machete with me to start hacking crap down in front of me with, because they did not maintain that trail at all. Not at all. There were several points where the markers, like they have these little triangle markers, and they nail them to a tree on these trails. So that way you just follow the color of your path. And a lot of them had fallen. We couldn't find some of them. There were a couple of miles straight where we saw no markers whatsoever on this trail, and we're sitting here going, are we lost? Are we on the same trail? Like, where are we? Did we lose the trail somewhere? And finally, we would come across another one, and because I'd get out the compass and everything, and we'd start going, okay, well, this place is this direction. Let's just head that direction until we see something. We'd finally catch back up with the mile marker. And it was kind of scary, but you know, it's good practice. I mean, some of the places that I might be going to in the Blue Ridge may not be mapped out like that. It may not be an actual hiking trail I'm on. I may be trekking through the woods for all I know. Hi, Summer Baby. I mean, I could very seriously wind up being trekking through the woods. So the reason why I chose a state park to practice, if you're gonna hike, okay, everybody thinks, oh, you buy a pair of hiking boots, you get a backpack, you're a hiker. No, no. You need to train for that stuff. You need to work up endurance. You need to work up strength. You need to be able to know what to do in an emergency situation. If you're gonna hike and you're not a very experienced hiker, you should be going with somebody who either is or multiple people, especially if you're going out for a first time. I've been hiking since I was 13, so for me to say I'm gonna go on the Appalachian in 2 to 3 years, and I'm working my way up to it. I'm training hardcore now. I'm weightlifting. I'm running. I'm doing the practice rucks. I'm gonna weigh down my pack, and I'm gonna practice. It's not that far stretched for me. But if some Joe Blow down the street who's never hiked or let alone can't even run a mile on their own without any weight on them is like, oh, I'm gonna go hike on the Appalachian. Probably not a good idea. So, over with my rant, I promise. But with this hike, when we finally get back, we were on the equestrian trail, and we wind up finding a main road. And the equestrian trail was taking too long, and the park was going to close soon. Now, what happens in a state park is, if you aren't back by a certain time, and they find your car, they will start to send out a search party for you. Which, by the way, they will charge you for, just so you know. But we didn't want to be a search party rescue. We didn't need rescuing. We also did not want to get locked in the state park. We were there for a day trip. We had no camping equipment on us or anything like that, and me and my neighbor had plans that night to play Pathfinder. Yes, I am a female nerd. I do play Pathfinder. It's kind of like D&D, but it's a free version where I ain't got to pay for all the books. We were supposed to have a game that night, and I was like, I do not want to be stuck out in the woods we're running out of water. We have already used up our food for the day. We have an apple left each, and we need to get back right now. So we saw the main road, and we looked at the map we're holding. We're like, okay, well, the main road will at least take us back to civilization. So we jump on the main road, and we start hiking the main road. And about the last mile of our hike, we run out of water. We stop sweating, and which is actually really dangerous if you stop sweating. And even though I had drank 1.25 gallons of a gallon of water, 1.25 gallons of freaking water, I stopped sweating. It was 101 degrees by the end of the day, especially once we hit that black asphalt pavement road. And as we're walking along, we're like trying to keep each other motivated, like, come on, just a little bit further, let's just book right through it. We'll get there, and we'll be able to go, and, you know, we'll be able to go get water. Well, all of a sudden, me and my friend are walking along. Oh, thank you for the hearts. You know, motivation when you have a partner that you're hiking with is huge when it comes to getting where you need to go. And one of the things that I've got to learn if I'm going to be in the Appalachian by myself for a week is that I've got to find ways to keep my own self motivated, which isn't too hard as long as I got some music. I'm usually pretty good about that. But on this hike, on the last mile, I started smelling a metallic smell. And by the way, girls, my mommy scopers, I'm talking about the 16-mile hike follow-up of my crazy trip that I did on Saturday. But I started to smell something on the hike, and it was 1 mile left to the visitor center. We saw a thing that said 1 mile to the visitor center, and we're like, okay, good. As long as we can get to the visitor center, we could find somebody who could take us back to our car, because our car was not on any of the maps. Our parking lot was on none of the maps that we had in our hand, because like I said, their maps sucked. So I'm walking along with my friend Grayson, and I'm like, I smell something metallic. I was like, why do I smell metal? Like, that's a weird thing to smell. And then I started tasting metallic. Now, usually when you hear like, oh, somebody's tasting metallic, they're usually saying like, oh, you're tasting blood. No, it was not blood. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm smelling my arms and stuff, and I'm smelling my hands, and I'm like, where is the metal smell coming from? And it dawned on me. I was like, we've already stopped sweating. And then all of a sudden, we drank the last bottle of water we had, we split it, and we started sweating a little bit again, but it came out metallic smelling. Reason being is we started sweating out our minerals, our iron. And sweating out your iron on a hike can go horribly wrong real quick. It can make you weak. It can make you excessively bleed if you get hurt and make your blood harder to clot. It can make you very, very sick. You could throw up from it. You can pass out from it. I mean, it's not good. So I'm like, he's like, no, I don't think that's what it is. And I'm like, dude, I think we're sweating out our iron. Like, I'm smelling metal. This is not normal. So we finally get to the visitor station, and we are so sore by the time we get there. We could not take another step. It hurt so bad to move at that point because we were banking on a 16-mile hike, and we're like, we have had to have gone further than 16 miles. We're thinking once we got to the visitor center, oh, we must have gone like 18, only 2 miles over. So we walk into the visitor center after we sit down in front of the visitor center, like tears rolling down our faces. We're in so much pain. And we sit there for like 15 minutes, and we get up, and we're like baby stepping at this point with our equipment. We're like, oh my God, ow, 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 every step we take. And we're like, I just want to go back to the car. And I walk in, and 2 rangers are standing there. And I look at them, and they're like, are you guys okay? Because my face was as red as a Solo cup. I was getting overheated. And I looked at them, and I'm like, your maps suck. And they're like, what? I'm like, your maps for your trails suck, just so you know. And by the way, you guys need to maintenance that 16-mile loop. They're like, you guys actually did the 16-mile loop? And I was like, well, actually. And we pulled out the map, and I showed them the trail we took. And they were like, well, you wind up doing a lot more than 16 miles because those maps are wrong. The person who drew them wrong, and we're having to get them redone. And this time we're actually getting a, what are they called? A topographer, I think is what they call them, map makers, and to do like an actual map, not this little rinky-dink, oh, let's just draw the kind of sort of the way it goes. No, they're gonna get an actual full-blown map. And they were looking at it, and they were like, you actually did 22 to 25 miles in one day. And I looked at him, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me. We made it that far? And he's like, yeah. And girls, let me tell you, I've never been so happy in my life. I cried at that point. I just bawled my freaking eyes out. They're like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm so happy. I actually made it like super far with a gallon of water on my freaking back. Like, holy crap, this is awesome. And they were like, what's the big deal? I was like, the big deal is I've only ever done a 12-mile hike up to that point. I was like, I wanted to see how far I could make it with barely any weight on my back, so that way I could determine how far I can make it when there's a full pack on my back. So take about what I did and cut that in half, and that's how far you can make it with a full weight. And they were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I'm like doing a happy dance in the middle of the visitor center. And I was like, we cannot walk another mile. Like, we cannot walk another step at this point. I was like, we've run out of water. We're down to our last apples in our pack. I was like, we need to ride back to our car. It doesn't even show on the map where our car is. And they're like, well, where are you parked? And I was like, oh, we're parked in the hiking parking lot. Turns out we went 5 miles in the wrong direction because they did not have it marked on the map in order to get back on our car. Had we had turned right instead of left, we would have been to the car in a couple miles at that point from the point that we turned. Instead, we walked 5 miles in the wrong direction. So a little old lady was standing behind the visitor center counter. She's worked there for years. And she looked at us and she goes, well, I get off in 5 minutes, so how about this? I will take you back to your car. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. You are like a godsend right now. You are the sweetest woman on the face of the planet. So she rides us back over to our car, and we just sit there in the car, in the air for a few minutes, and we filled up our water bottles and my camel pack at the visitor center. And we're sitting there just sucking down water, and finally we're like, let's just go home. So we get home. And I called my husband on the way home. I was like, we finally made it back to the car, because I had called him in a panic that we had gone 5 miles in the wrong direction and we had no clue where our car was. Not something that your husband wants to hear when you're an hour from home. Definitely not, especially when he just got off work, because it scared the daylights out of him. He's like, what do you mean? You guys went the wrong direction, and now you can't walk any further. You need help. You need to find help. And I was like, we found help. We got back to the car. Everything's cool. We're safe. We're good. And he's like, okay, we'll get home. I'm cooking dinner. So I come home, and he's already got 2 turkey burgers made for me, because we switched from ground beef to turkey. It's just healthier. By the way, they actually taste really good if you use ground turkey for a hamburger. Oh my God. You will not regret the decision. It's really, really good. And it was nice and salty because he added extra salt and stuff to it, which I really needed the salt to replace. We came in and I get out of the car and I could barely move. I'm baby stepping. I'm practically crawling to my house. And my husband gets all of the equipment and stuff out of the car, and he's like, just go lay down. I lay down, and no joke, I don't think I moved for like an hour. When I did, had to go upstairs to go take a shower, I crawled. I had to take iron pills when I got home. I had to drink 2 Gatorades on top of chasing that with water to get electrolytes rushed back into my system because we were dehydrated. I ate 2 burgers and a salad and vegetables and all sorts of other stuff trying to just get my energy back up, and I stayed hungry for the rest of the day. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, holy crap, I'm so hungry. And so I kept eating like all afternoon and everything, but it was good because I needed to replace it. But the cool thing is that my kids are out of town for a week. They're visiting their father. So on Sunday, we went to go see Jurassic World. By the way, if you have not seen that movie, oh my god, it rocks. It's an awesome movie. And then after that, we stopped at a outdoor wilderness store. We were going to go to Dick's Sporting Goods, but Dick's Sporting Goods, they're more for outdoor sports type of people. I need an outdoor store, like type of hiking, camping, climbing, hunting, that sort of type of store. So we went to a store called Cabela's. And I walked in after the movie, and I looked at the guy at customer service. I said, I'm prepping for a trip in 2 to 3 years for the Blue Ridge Parkway and Appalachian Trail, and I'm going to see how far I can make it in 5 days. I was like, every night I will be stopping at a campground where my husband is, and I will be restocking my food, water, things like that I need, and spending the night there. I was like, but in case I get caught out in the wilderness, I'm going to need a 1-person tent. I'm going to need, my sleeping bag. I'm going to need equipment and everything else for if stuff does go wrong, things that I might need. I need medic kits. I need to know, do you have anybody who is experienced in that area of the mountains, who does the wilderness hikes and things like that? So they call up a guy who goes hiking every year. He goes backpacking across the Appalachian every year during the summer. And he had just gotten back from a trip at the Blue Ridge Parkway. So he comes up and he's like, hey, and I tell him what I'm trying to do, and he's looking at me like I've gone crazy. He's like, you're going to do this by yourself? And I was like, well, yes, I am going to do this by myself. Because see, there's a story behind this, ladies. I told you guys a little bit about it on Mommy Scopes. I have suffered from bipolar disorder and depression for a vast majority of my life. And I always promised myself after I found out I was bipolar, because it does run in my family, that once I got mentally stable enough, learned better coping skills, things like that I was going to complete my waterfall project. And I was going to go out and prove to myself as the biggest, last, kiss my butt, I could do it, I know I could do it type attitude, which I know is like, why would you have that type of attitude? Let me tell you, I've been told my entire life that you're never going to amount to anything, you'll never be able to accomplish anything, and not by my husband, but by my family. I've always been put down about any idea I have, especially anything involving the outdoors. Oh, you're too weak to do that, you're a girl, things like that. And it's like, you know what? Go screw yourself. So it's kind of like my biggest thing is I want to prove to myself that I can do it. I've already proved to myself I can do a 10 to 12 mile hike and visit 6 waterfalls in one day at a state park up in Nashville. I've already proved that I can climb the waterfalls. I've even proved that I can get behind the waterfall and get that shot that I need of the water rushing over, because eventually I am going to go after getting this photography project into a gallery, and I've already submitted a few of my shots to National Geographic. Haven't heard back from them yet, but it's a contest that was going on, and I submitted my work to it. So I've already proven that I could do that part, and then on Saturday I proved that I can make a full 22 miles, which is amazing. I mean, how many girls do you know who are skinny and not very athletic during the winter? I mean, can flat out say, like, yeah, I just, on a whim, it's been 2.5 years since I went hiking, and I just went out and trucked 22 miles. I mean, whoa. So I know I can do it. And my husband's like, this proves to me that you can make it. You can do it. You can totally get it done. So, he took us around the store for about 2.5 hours on Sunday. We went over all the different types of equipment that we would possibly need for the campground, for my pack. I've got to buy a new pack because my old pack broke, because when I was in Asheville, one of the times I went to Asheville, I fell down the side of a waterfall. I was climbing up the wet granite, my hand slipped, and my foot came out from underneath me, and I went down with a full pack. Luckily, my camera equipment didn't break, because it's really expensive camera equipment, so I'm really, really happy my camera equipment did not break on that fall. But, I mean, I had granite all up in my arms, down my stomach, down my legs. My pack broke. When I hit the ground, it got snagged on a rock on the way down. It tore it. The strap came away from the pack, so I've got to get a new pack. And, you know, I've got to get other equipment and stuff. And the cool thing is I found a handheld GPS that is not only a satellite GPS made by Garmin, but it's specifically made for backpackers and hikers. And it's even got, if you're going to scout out your trip before you go, which I totally intend on doing, it's got a camera function to it. So you can walk up, like I could go up to Asheville, Blue Ridge Parkway, wherever I want to go for a day, right? Up in the Appalachians. And I could say, okay, I want to hit this waterfall. I can go out and find the coordinates for that waterfall, snap a picture of it, and it will save it on the screen, save the exact latitude, longitude, altitude, everything about that particular site onto it. So when I go to plan my trip, I can go trip, click, 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 click. These are the waterfalls I want to go to, and it will basically tell me how to hike from one side to the other of my entire trip. So that's a really cool function, although it's a little pricey, so I'm going to have to save up for it, but I can do this. I want that GPS. And then if you are going to go hiking, one thing that I'm going to be buying soon, it's called Spot On. The Spot. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the Spot, if any of you outdoorsy people have. It is an SOS system. It's a satellite tracker. You can either put it on your wrist with a band, or you can carabiner it to your pack. And what it does is you pre-program it before you leave. If you need non-life-threatening emergency help, you can click the hand-to-hand button. It's like a picture of two hands. And it will send out a message with your latitude, longitude, and a non-life-threatening help emergency to a contact that you choose. So that's plus. You can send a text message out every 5, 10, 15, 30, 60, and 90 minutes, depending on how you pre-program it. That'll give your latitude and longitude coordinations to somebody that you deem needs them, so that way they know where you are. Then on top of that, there's these little footprint buttons, and the footprint button will imprint on their system your location, and your person, whoever you deem can see it, can get on there and in real life time track you down the trail that you're on. And it'll alert them also if you sit for too long. It'll alert them, and it'll start sending latitude, longitude, latitude, longitude. And the cool thing about it is it's also got an SOS button on it. You have to pull a pin out to hit the SOS button. But the cool thing about the SOS button is that if you get injured, like let's say I fall off a waterfall, or I fall, break a leg, break an arm, break something where I can't get back to a campground, I can pull the pin, click the SOS button, it'll send out a GPS to emergency response systems, an international emergency response system. It works around the world, so if you're going to go backpacking in the United States, in Canada, in South Africa, and, wherever, you got it covered. It will send out internationally. So it'll send out to response teams, and a voice will come across it, and it'll say, do you need help? If you do, push this button. And if you don't answer, they auto-send right out to you. If you answer and you're like, yeah, I accidentally hit it by accident, the pin came out, my bag kind of bumped it, they'll be like, okay, cancel everybody. Or if you can talk, they will keep you talking while somebody comes out and finds you. So if you're ever thinking about backpacking and you're wanting to do a serious trip or even just a day hike, look